we are going to get started. My name is Annette Triplett. I am going to be leading you through our December Let's Chat this evening on the topic of what does it mean to be a local motion member? And I have Gabby with me as my wing person for Zoom. So if I miss any questions along the way, Gabby may pop in to make sure I answer any questions. So first of all, some quick background on who I am. Again, my name is Annette Triplett. I've been with PedNet, now Local Motion, for a while. I was hired in 2013 in the CEO role. And so I was in that position for just over 8 years. And then this year, we restructured the organization, shifted some positions around, and I stepped into a Chief Development Officer position. And so that's what I've been doing for about the last year. Some background on Local Motion before we get into membership stuff. First of all, we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit organization. There has been some confusion over the years about PedNet Local Motion, whether we are independent or associated with a city or some sort of government. And no, we are a totally independent charitable organization, 501c3, with a board of directors for our governing body. And we are a grassroots advocacy organization focused on transportation equity. So our mission is to provide walking, biking, and transit solutions to meet people's everyday transportation needs. So we advocate for safe streets, sidewalks, protected bike lanes, trails, and transit service so everyone can get where they want to go. We think of walking, biking, and transit as tools to build a stronger community. So we're not in this to necessarily get every single person on a bike or to take away anyone's cars. We really believe that if a community is built in a way that makes walking, biking, and transit easy and safe, it is a stronger community. It's more equitable, it's healthier, it's more sustainable, and it's more economically thriving. We believe that, and we also know from the data that that is true. So what does Local Motion do? We carry out our mission through two primary types of activities. Number one, programs and events, and number two, policy and infrastructure. For programs and events, we are working to influence behavior at the individual level. So we're working to encourage individual folks to choose to walk or bike or ride the bus. So some examples of our programs and events. We have run many programs over the years. Right now, the program that we're focusing most on is our Giving Rides program. This is a photo of our Giving Rides bike. It's called the Duet, and it's a two-seater bike. So the front is a wheelchair and the back half is a standard bike. So we have a staff person or a volunteer that pilots the bike and sits on the back and pedals. And then we give a ride to folks with disabilities, older folks, anyone who will be able to not ride a bike independently, and they can sit in the wheelchair front half of the bike. And so the whole purpose of the program is to just share the simple pleasure and joy of riding a bike with folks who wouldn't be able to do that on their own. We do offer this program for free. We usually partner with assisted living facilities or direct service agencies that work with folks with disabilities. We also offer several events throughout the year. Bike Walk and Wheel Week is one of our signature events. This started in Columbia in 2002, and we were involved with it from the very beginning. The city of Columbia took Bike Walk and Wheel Week for a couple years, and they managed the events, and then we took it back. So we've been involved with it for a very long time. But the whole point of Bike Walk and Wheel Week is just to celebrate being active. It's to encourage folks to get out and to walk, bike, and ride the bus. Bike Walk and Wheel Week is a week-long series of events, usually in May. And so every day we offer an event that encourages people to get out and walk, bike, or ride the bus in a fun social setting. We offer as many of these events as we can for free to make it as easy and accessible for as many people as possible. So this is an image of Breakfast Station Day, which is one of our most popular events. This is usually the Friday of Bike Walk and Wheel Week, and we set up breakfast stations all over town where anyone who walks, bikes, or rides the bus to their work or school or wherever they're going that day, they can stop at the breakfast station and get a free breakfast. And so people love coming out. This is always a really fun day. And then a couple of our other signature events are Bikes and Brews. This is an event where we do a bike tour of downtown Columbia with stops for microbrew samples. So the whole point of this event is just to show that you can get out and be with your friends and be social and have a good evening on the town. And you can do it on bikes. You don't have to drive. You don't have to worry about driving home at the end of the evening. You can do it safely and have fun with your friends on bikes. And so we've done this in Columbia for many, many years. Bikes and Brews is one of our most popular events, and we were able to bring it back again this year. And then similarly, we have an event just for women called Velovino Vici, Bike, Wine, Conquer. And it's similar to Bikes and Brews. It's a tour of downtown Columbia, but for stops with wine samples. And Velovino Vici has just really taken off. This year was fantastic. We had an even bigger group of women at Velovino Vici than we did for the total participants at Bikes and Brews. And so it was super fun to have like 60, 65 women out on bikes on a really lovely Sunday afternoon. Again, just showing that you can get out and be social with your friends and you don't have to use your car. So going back to our different types of activities, looking at the policy and infrastructure activities. So this is where we try to influence the community or environmental level. So programs and events work at the individual level, meaning each person has to make different choices to use these forms of transportation. The policy and infrastructure level is about making it safe and easy at the community level for anyone to use these forms of transportation. So policy and infrastructure changes have the potential to reach a lot more people than programs and events that work at the individual level. So for example, a lot of people know that local motion has been involved with advocating for trails for many, many years. This was really a big part of why local motion was founded way back in 2000. So we, I believe, have advocated for every single trail in Columbia over the last 21 years. And so this is an image of the Shepherd to Rollins Trail, which we advocated for over many years. And the first section of it was built and opened in 2020. And so we took our staff out there to celebrate its opening. This trail, we actually started advocating for it in 2008. So it took 12 years of advocacy for this section of trail to be approved and to be built. And there's actually still another section still upcoming. So that's just an example of the long-term advocacy that local motion has been doing in the policy and infrastructure area. Along those lines, this summer, we also led an advocacy campaign for trails through the park sales tax. So rather than we're trying to work at the individual project level, so like individual trail by trail, we tried to influence an entire list of projects that would be funded through the park sales tax renewal. So park sales tax came back to the voters to be renewed on the November ballot. And ahead of that vote, we assembled an advocacy campaign to influence the list of projects that would be funded by the park sales tax. So when we saw the draft project list earlier in the summer, we noticed that there was really minimal investment in trails, even though the community members in surveys had identified trails as their number one need in the community in terms of park facilities. So we led a pretty strong campaign and with broad community support to influence that project list. And it worked. City council listened, city staff listened, and they adjusted the project list to include the trails that the community members had asked for. And the ask here was really targeted. It wasn't necessarily just more trails everywhere. It was more trails in the areas that don't have trails now. So trying to increase equitable access to trails for the communities that currently have the least access to trails and to other forms of transportation infrastructure. And so this was a campaign that we were really proud of, and that really will influence the next 10 years of trail building in Columbia, because the park sales tax will continue on for the next 10 years. And so this campaign this summer really has changed the course of trail building in Columbia for the next 10 years. We also work at the policy level. So those are some examples of infrastructure projects. Now I'll share with you some policy projects. In 2016, Local Motion led a campaign that resulted in the city of Columbia being the first city in the state of Missouri to adopt a Vision Zero policy and being one of the first small cities in the country to adopt this type of policy. So Vision Zero is a policy usually adopted at the city level that is a philosophical commitment that says we believe as a city that it is ethically unacceptable that people are killed or seriously injured in traffic crashes in our city. And we are going to take steps to prevent those crashes from resulting in deaths and serious injuries. So we were the first city in Missouri to take that step, and Local Motion led the campaign that resulted in Columbia adopting that policy. Columbia set a goal of eliminating all traffic deaths and serious injuries by 2030. And again, this is all traffic deaths. So not just people walking, biking, or transit, which is what we primarily focus on, but all forms of transportation. So including people driving. So trying to make streets safer for everyone. And along with the philosophical commitment with the policy, there's an action plan that goes along with it of how you're going to achieve that goal. And so this was a policy win that we were very proud of several years ago. In the map that's displayed here, identified the shaded areas are what are called Vision Zero priority neighborhoods. And these are areas where we identify high need neighborhoods. So low income neighborhoods with high populations of communities of color and populations with low vehicle ownership. So these are typically the types of folks who have the least access to transportation when it is truly just a car-centric transportation system. And so we started to work to prioritize folks in these neighborhoods and prioritize their transportation needs. And that leads to our next project, which is neighborhood grassroots organizing. So looking at where those Vision Zero priority neighborhoods are, those are areas where the transportation system places people at high risk of traffic deaths and serious injuries, in part because of housing policies that place affordable housing along high-speed roads where crashes are more likely to occur. These neighborhoods also have really high rates of walking and biking relative to other areas of the city. And so folks in those areas have to kind of crisscross more dangerous roads more frequently. And so we wanted to really hear from the people in those neighborhoods about what their transportation needs are. So we started a project where we actually hire 2 what we're calling neighborhood leaders in each of the Vision Zero priority neighborhoods. So we pay these folks to come and meet with us and to share their lived experiences with us. So we have 10 neighborhood leaders who meet with us on a monthly basis and communicate with us even more regularly. And they share with us what transportation needs they're seeing on the ground. So we know what the data say in terms of what transportation needs are and who are affected by traffic crashes, but we didn't want to assume that we knew what all the needs are or even what all the solutions are. We wanted to partner with the people who are in those neighborhoods and are placed at the highest risk by our current transportation system. And so we developed this neighborhood leader model where we are really working to co-create solutions. So the neighborhood leaders bring to us the transportation needs that they see in their neighborhoods. We bring transportation expertise and advocacy expertise, and together we can co-create solutions to address transportation needs in those neighborhoods. And that is leading into our next big advocacy campaign, which is for what we're calling an equity-focused complete streets policy. So knowing that there are certain areas of the city in Columbia, and this is reflective of national trends as well, where certain groups of people are placed at high risk by the current transportation system, we want to influence the policies of where transportation improvements are placed so that they serve the places where the risk is highest. So make those improvements in the places where the need is highest and where the risk is highest. So Complete Streets is a policy that designs streets for all forms of transportation. So not just accommodation. So the idea that like, yes, you're allowed to be here, but you're going to feel uncomfortable if you're not in a car. The idea with an equity-focused Complete Streets policy is that the street doesn't just allow you to be there, but it ensures that you are safe, regardless of what form of transportation that you are using. And so that means that the street is going to be safe whether you're walking or biking or riding the bus or driving. And so we are now leading a campaign for Columbia to adopt an equity-focused Complete Streets policy. This is an update. This will be an update from Columbia's existing Complete Streets policy, which was adopted in 2004, but hasn't been updated in the last 17 years. So we're really advocating for more modern best practices around safe street design. And then we also do some advocacy work at the state level, and this is through our state branch called Missourians for Responsible Transportation, or MRT for short. So MRT works out of our Local Motion office, and they are a partnership between 4 organizations. So ourselves here, Local Motion in Columbia, Bike Walk KC in Kansas City, TrailNet in St. Louis, and Ozark Greenways in Springfield. So the 4 of us came together and founded Missourians for Responsible Transportation to address advocacy issues at the state level, because each of us is fairly regionally focused, and we knew that by collaborating, we would be more effective in addressing issues at the state level. So MRT is really doing a great job of addressing the transportation needs at the state level. So for example, MRT is leading a pretty large and impressive coalition to address distracted driving through state level legislation. So for example, right now, Missouri doesn't have a law against texting and driving for most drivers, as well as other forms of handheld device use. And so MRT is leading a coalition that is pushing for and supporting legislation to address distracted driving at the state level. So how does this all relate back to membership? How does Local Motion's membership work? So Local Motion was founded as a member-based coalition. That was the idea from the very beginning when we were founded. And we now represent around 8,000 people in the Columbia area. So we have tripled our membership in the last few years. And we have 3 types of membership structure. We have an individual and family membership, we have business memberships, and we have clubs and organizations. At the individual and family level, we have recommended membership amounts, but we really didn't want cost to be a barrier to anyone's ability to be part of Local Motion as a member. So we consider anyone who makes a donation to Local Motion in any amount to be a member. For businesses, clubs, and organizations, we do have required amounts for membership because they get some additional benefits. These are some images of some of our members, of our business members and club and organization members. So part of the reason that we are able to represent so many people in Columbia is because we represent some pretty major employers. So for example, Veterans United Home Loans, Shelter Insurance, Boone County Lumber, we represent them and their employees. We also have both of the business districts as organizational members. So the district, meaning the downtown business district, and the loop, the business loop, those are both organizational members of Local Motion. And so we represent the businesses that they represent and their employees as well. So why does Local Motion have members? This was part of how Local Motion was founded, in that we believe that we represent the community's transportation needs. But we didn't want to just make the assumption again that we knew what all the transportation needs are. So by having a membership structure, that helps us develop strong relationships throughout the community And that allows us to have a two-way street between ourselves and community members. So we receive input from our members through meetings and through our community survey on what our members' transportation needs are. And then that influences our advocacy. We take people's input and we use it to inform what the priorities of our advocacy need to be in order to make sure that we are representing our members' needs. We also occasionally provide training to our members on how to advocate for their own needs. We certainly want to do a good job of representing other people and advocating on behalf of other people's needs, but we also want to ensure that folks have the tools to advocate for their own needs and have the skills and confidence to do that. And so occasionally in our advocacy campaigns, when a person identifies that they want to participate in an advocacy campaign, we'll do coaching with them on how advocacy works and how they can best structure their personal advocacy. But really the big reason behind having membership is that it allows us to show that we have a really strong base of community support when we need to take an advocacy position. So when we go to city council, if it were just me saying, hey, I represent local motion and our 7 staff members, that's not a very strong argument. But when we can say, hey, we're local motion, we represent 7,000 people in your city, that's a much stronger argument. And when we're able to fill the council chambers with 300 people who are willing to show up to a meeting on a Monday night. So when we have members, we are able to bring folks out to show support for the positions that we take. And that allows us to be much more influential in our advocacy. So that's kind of like the philosophical perspective of why we have members. But then there's also just the practical perspective, which is that we need financial support. We are a business, just like any other business. Sometimes there's some confusion about what it means to be a nonprofit. We are technically a corporation. So we are a business, just like any other for-profit business, but we're business in business for the public good. But that means we still have expenses like any other business. And since we're an advocacy organization, our primary expenses are our people, because the advocacy happens through our people. And so we really believe that if we want to be effective as an organization, we need to invest in our people. So that means we need to pay people as well as we can. We need to provide good benefits. We need to provide good office space and the tools and the resources that people need to be effective. Because if we do that, our staff will then be able to carry out our mission in an effective way. So we do have all those costs associated with being a business and investing in our staff. Also, advocacy work is really difficult to fund. So I've been in this role or similar roles for 9 years, and that is probably the biggest thing that I have learned in this role, that advocacy is really difficult to fund. So we are a business, but we're not selling a product. We do occasionally do some consulting work where folks can hire us to help them with transportation issues in their communities. But in general, we're not selling anything. We're also not a direct service agency. So some charitable organizations provide direct services to people in need. So for example, a food bank or food pantry may provide meals to people who are hungry. So that would be a direct service. We really don't do direct services in general. Our service is advocacy, but that takes some explaining. So some people are not even really familiar with what advocacy is or how it works or why you would want to invest in it. And so it takes explaining like what advocacy is, what do we do on a day-to-day basis, why are we going to so many meetings? It takes some explaining for people to understand what advocacy is. And advocacy often creates impact in the very long term. So I shared the example earlier of the Shepherd to Rollins Trail that we've now been involved with for 13 years and will continue to be involved in until it's completed in the next couple of years. That's a very long-term project. And a lot of people in the community have wanted that and have supported that over the years, but local motion has had to be there every step of the way to ensure that that project was completed as the community wanted it to be. And so that just speaks to the long-term nature of this work. And that speaks to local motion's impact on the community over the last 21 years, that we have been able to be there through that entire steps of that project as well as many others. But advocacy work is less tangible than many other causes. And so it's not as easy to understand, it's not as easy to explain, and it's not as easy to fundraise around, frankly. Also, importantly, advocacy is not allowed by many grant funders. So sometimes there's this idea in the nonprofit world, or among people who are not in the nonprofit world, that like, oh, you nonprofits, you can just go write a grant and get some money from a foundation and no problem, that's how you can fund your work. That's definitely not completely true. We do, Local Motion does have quite a few grants, and that is a big chunk of our income. However, very few foundations allow advocacy as an allowable activity. Most of them do not allow it. And that's because foundations have some regulations around lobbying, and there is a distinction between lobbying and advocacy. There is a line that can be drawn between the two, but many foundations are not comfortable with even coming close to that line. And so they just say, nope, advocacy is not allowable. Don't bother applying if you are an advocacy organization. So again, I've been here for 9 years. We have had lots of grants over that time, but I think I can count 3, maybe 4 foundations that all of our grant money has come from during that time. In the world of thousands of foundations, very, very few of them allow advocacy as an allowable expense. So that really limits the types of funding that we can go for. So our members are people who support Local Motion financially as well as philosophically. So lots of people think, yeah, I would love to live in a world where it's easy for kids to walk to school, where it's safe for me to bike, where I can ride a bus to get to shopping, or where I don't have to worry about being killed in a car crash. Lots of people want to live in that world, but not many people understand that that world doesn't just happen. Like that world happens because a lot of people have pushed for it over the years, including Local Motion. And for us to be able to do that and to be in that role, we need financial support. And so our members really provide that financial support for us to be able to be in that role and push for that world that we all would like to live in. So then some people ask, okay, I know that you need my support and I'm willing to give financially, but I know you also get some of these larger dollar grant funds. So does my $100 or $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever, does my donation really matter? Is it just kind of a token to say, yes, I support you, or does it actually matter? My answer to that is a very emphatic yes. It makes a huge, huge difference. Our members' donations are our most valuable source of income. And when I say valuable, I don't mean highest source of income or highest amount. I mean what the donations allow us to do. I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. So donations that we receive in general are unrestricted. So the donors say, here, I'm going to give you this donation, use it for whatever you need. That allows us to use the funding where we need it most. That allows us to determine our own priorities and where it would be best to invest those funds. Again, as an advocacy organization, usually where it's best to invest those funds is in our staff, so that they are able to be in all these places to influence decisions that are being made. But occasionally we also need to buy things. So right now we really need to buy a trailer because we have a fleet of bike education bikes and pop-up traffic calming supplies, and we don't have any ability to get it to all these places that we want to take it. So occasionally we need to buy things, and because donations are unrestricted, we have the flexibility to make that choice and say, you know what, if we raise enough from our fundraising this year, we can go ahead and buy a trailer. So we have the flexibility to do that. Donations also allow us to be responsive to issues as they arise. We are always looking to the future and trying to predict and be prepared for the future, but of course we can't predict the future. And so occasionally things pop up that we weren't able to predict or be prepared for. And so donations allow us to be responsive to issues as things come up. Donations also allow us to advocate for issues when we have no other funding sources to support our work. I shared the example earlier of the park sales tax campaign that we led this summer, which influenced the next 10 years of trails in Columbia. We were able to lead that campaign because we had donations. We have several sources of grant funding this year, but none of those sources would have allowed us to use their funding for a park sales tax campaign. So the only way that we were able to step into that gap and lead a really strong community-supported campaign to influence the park sales tax project list and to include more trails in the project list was because we had donations. We had no other source of money to help us fund the financial impact of that campaign, but we were able to do it because we had donations. On the flip side of that, grant funding is almost always restricted, meaning that the funding can only be used on a specific project. So when you write a grant proposal, you'd say, I'd like to request $100,000 to do XYZ thing. And if you are funded, because of course there's no guarantee that you will be funded, if you are funded, you can only use that funding on XYZ thing. So if something else exciting or a big opportunity pops up along the way, it doesn't matter. You still can't use those funds on something other than what you proposed. So that means that the project that you apply for with grant funding has to be identified ahead of time. And sometimes it's years ahead of time. So we're working on a project right now that I wrote in maybe June of 2019, and that project is going to carry us through part of 2022. So I was predicting years ahead of time what we would need funding for and how we would like to prioritize those funds. So that means you're really tied in to those projects when you're kind of trying to predict the future years ahead of time. And again, as I mentioned, most grant funders do not allow advocacy to be a type of activity used with their grant dollars. So donations also are critical to our ability to accept large grants. I mentioned that we do have large sources of grant funds and they're a big portion of our budget, but grants rarely cover a project's true costs, and that's where donations come in. So I'm going to give you an example here, a real life grant budget. So the project I just mentioned a moment or so ago, we received in 2019, and it was $217,000 over 2 years. So it sounds like big money. That's great. It's going to allow us to do this project over 2 years. The grant expenses, I'm putting that in air quotes here, is also $217,000. So anytime you write a grant proposal, the expenses that you allocate to that grant have to match the income exactly. So there's no profit involved in grants, which is a pretty strong downside. If you were in a for-profit business, there'd be very few projects that you would be willing to take on when there's no profit margin at all. But it actually gets worse because we actually did the math on what it truly costs us to run this project. And it's more like $228,000, not the $217,000 that we are paid by the funder. So that means we have an $11,000 gap that we need to fundraise for in order for us to accept this $217,000. So the donations help us fill that gap. If we did not have the donations to cover that $11,000 gap, we would not be able to accept the grant, because accepting the grant would mean actually losing money. So our donors' smaller amounts of money allow us to accept much larger sources of income. So that means that our ability to do our advocacy work is directly dependent on our ability to fundraise. So if you make a $100 donation, for example, to Local Motion, your $100 is making hundreds of thousands of dollars of income and years of advocacy work possible. So that's why donations are so huge to Local Motion and why they have such a big impact on our ability to carry out our advocacy mission. So back to the real question that we started with, what do I get for being a Local Motion member? Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna join, I'm gonna donate a certain amount. What do I get for being a Local Motion member? Number one, you get a whole team of people advocating on your behalf. We will represent you at the local, state, and federal levels. Most of the work that we do is Columbia based, so primarily at the local level. Missourians for Responsible Transportation, MRT, they work at the state level, and so they'll be representing you and your interests at the state level. And then we also monitor the federal level as well. So when something big comes up, we can get you involved and show you how you can make an impact. So when you have a whole team of people working for you, it means that we're in the room where it happens. It means that we are everywhere. These are just a few of the teams where Local Motion and MRT staff are representing you when you are a member. So at the city level, we are on all the Vision Zero teams, engineering, education, enforcement, crash analysis team. We're on most of the city commissions that relate to our work. So we're on the Bike Ped Commission, Public Transit Advisory Commission, Board of Health, Climate and Environment Commission, the Redistricting Commission, and then other areas of the city, we're on the Chamber of Commerce. And then at the state level, we are on the Missouri Hands-Free Coalition, Missouri Livable Streets, and Missouri Council on Activity and Nutrition, among others that I couldn't fit on the slide. So point being here that we are in a lot of places so that we are involved in the decisions in a lot of different areas. So we're monitoring things, but we're also in the room where these decisions are starting to be made even before they get to a city council or state legislator level. So we were able to influence projects really, really early on in the process. And we understand that most people who join us as Local Motion members have jobs, have families, have hobbies, have lots of other things that they would love to do beyond just monitoring city legislative policy. And that is totally okay because that's our job. So you can kind of delegate your interests and your needs to us, and we will be on it like it's our job, because it is. And so we will take care of those things for you so that you don't have to be reading every city council agenda and being in all these meetings and task forces, because we are there for you on your behalf. But we also don't want to exclude you from the process either, and want to bring you in when we really need your help. So the second thing that we do for Local Motion members is that we provide you advocacy alerts when there are urgent policy issues and tell you how you can help. So sometimes that means sending a letter to city council or other decision makers. In the example of the park sales tax that I mentioned earlier, 350 people sent letters ahead of time. So sometimes we hear from members that like, oh, I'm just one person, I'm not going to have that much of an influence. But when you're one of 350 people, you are having an influence because you're filling council members' inboxes and they're starting to pay attention. And so that's just a really simple way that you can get involved, and we will let you know what the issue is, how you can best get involved, and what your message can be. Other examples of how to get involved can be showing up to a city council meeting. Again, this photo is from the park sales tax vote, where we were able to fill the council chambers even during COVID times. And then sometimes you can serve a special role if there's like one decision maker representing a ward that you happen to live in. We can set up a meeting with you and a decision maker where you're more likely to have a stronger influence because you are a constituent, and we can work with you on what to say and how to be effective in your advocacy. So again, we can provide some coaching along the way if you want to engage at that level, but sometimes it just means showing up and being in the room to show that we again have that strong base of community support. Thirdly, we provide you with our email newsletter with updates on our current projects. We want to keep you updated on all of our work and how things are going. These are some screenshots from some of our recent newsletters. So we tell you about our neighborhood leader project, sharing our Let's Chat that we're here for this evening, some upcoming events related to trails. So things that you would be interested in, but might not be totally cued in on. Again, because we're involved in so many groups, we kind of have an idea of what's going on and what you'd be interested in. And so we can share that information with you. And number 4, we invite you to events. So this is a photo from our member party in past years. We host a member party for our local motion members every year. If you haven't heard about it, it's tomorrow night. I hope you come. But in addition to that, we also will send invitations to Bike Walk Wheel Week and Bike Brews and Velovino Vici, Let's Chat, any other events that we have going on through the year, so you know exactly when they are and how to sign up. So those are all some of the benefits for individual members. For businesses, clubs, and organizations, we can offer some additional membership benefits that are really tailored to the needs and the interests of the organization. So for some of our businesses and clubs, especially, they think of a local motion membership as a benefit to their employees or to their members. And so sometimes they ask if we can provide something specific to them, like an event for their employees. For example, with Shelter, we've done an e-bike demo in their parking lot that their employees were able to come out and test e-bikes on site. We've also provided some trainings on how to ride safely in city traffic, what the laws and regulations are. Some businesses are also interested in being a sponsor of an event or a program and getting their name associated with one of the events or programs that we offer. And so we work with businesses on an individual basis to tailor their membership benefits to meet their needs. And so that's something that we just work with on an individual basis, but have a lot of flexibility to provide additional benefits for our businesses, clubs, and organizations. So let's say I convinced you, hooray, you want to join as a local motion member. How do we do it? Well, it is Como Gives time. Como Gives is a collaborative fundraising campaign of Columbia area nonprofits through the entire month of December. And that is where we run the bulk of our membership. So our biggest membership campaign of the year is right now in December in partnership with Como Gives. So you can go to comogives.com, and if you click on local motion, you can make a donation to us there, and we will credit it to your membership. So almost all of our members donate through Como Gives, and so they're on an annual cycle. And so almost everybody's memberships will be up for renewal in the month of December, and we ask you to give through Como Gives. At other times of year, when it's not Como Gives time, you can sign up to be a member on our website, which is lomocomo.org, and you can click on the Get Involved tab and then Membership, and that's where all the information is. But since we're in Como Gives time right now as we speak, if you want to make a donation, the best way to do that is through one of the peer-to-peer fundraisers through Como Gives. So peer-to-peer just means that one of our members is actually helping fundraise on our behalf. So the money still comes to local motion, but some individuals are being very generous with their time and offering special benefits if you give to their peer-to-peer fundraiser. So there are 12 people on Como Gives that are fundraising for local motion. If you give through one of their peer-to-peer fundraisers, you can help us win up to a $1,500 prize. So again, that idea of like you give a smaller amount and we are able to get a larger amount, peer-to-peer is a great way to do that. And since these peer-to-peer fundraisers are hosted by individuals, you can get some super cool benefits from them as individuals as well. So Beth and Barbie are hosting a low country boil in their backyard that you can go to. Jolynn is knitting sweaters and merino items for people. Austin is baking cookies. So you can get some really cool things in addition to your local motion membership if you give through a Como Gives peer-to-peer. Como Gives, again, is through the month of December, so it ends December 31st at midnight. So let's chat. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?